On the 22nd of June 1941, Adolf Hitler launched the largest land invasion in human history. More than 3 million German troops, supported by thousands of tanks, aircraft, and artillery, poured across a 1,800-mile front into the Soviet Union. This operation, codenamed Barbarossa, was designed to destroy the Red Army in just a few weeks, seize resource-rich territories in the east, and ultimately bring about the collapse of the Soviet state. In this video, we will examine how Hitler planned the Blitzkrieg, why it was initially so spectacularly successful, and how overconfidence combined with logistical missteps turned this greatest gamble into an irreparable disaster.
By early 1941, Hitler believed he had no remaining rivals in Europe. France had fallen, Britain was isolated, and the Balkans were under Axis control. To him, defeating the Soviet Union was the final obstacle to establishing German dominance on the continent. But Barbarossa was not just a military conquest, it was also an ideological war. Hitler viewed the Soviet Union as a racial enemy whose population was considered inferior by Nazi doctrine. This belief convinced Hitler that the Red Army would collapse as quickly as the Polish and French armies had. German intelligence agreed, estimating the Soviet Union to have only about 200 divisions, many of which were believed to be poorly equipped and poorly commanded. In reality, the Soviet Union had mobilized far more forces than German military planners had imagined. By the end of 1941, the Red Army had deployed nearly 800 divisions, an industrial base located deep behind the Ural Mountains, and reserves that Germany had never anticipated. This grave misjudgment of the enemy's capabilities laid the foundation for defeat. Barbarossa divided the Wehrmacht forces into 3 major offensives, each with its own strategic objective. Army Group North advancing toward Leningrad, Army Group South advancing into resource-rich Ukraine, and Army Group Center advancing directly toward Moscow, considered the decisive blow. The initial phase was a perfect reenactment of the Blitzkrieg tactics. The Army Group Center achieved the most impressive results, penetrating deep into Soviet lines. 2 of its armored groups surrounded powerful Soviet formations at Białystok and Minsk, capturing hundreds of thousands of prisoners in just a few weeks. Success continued at Smolensk in July, where Germany again encircled a large number of Soviet troops. However, the resistance there was far more tenacious and persistent than in Poland or France. Despite heavy casualties, the Red Army continued to hold back the Germans, forcing them to halt to regroup and address the logistical problems that had begun to emerge. For the first time since the start of Barbarossa, the pace of the Blitzkrieg slowed noticeably. The delay at Smolensk gave the Soviet Union invaluable time to mobilize reserves, reorganize defenses, and prepare for the decisive battle to defend Moscow. Following the Battle of Smolensk, the German command debated the next move. Despite the advice of many generals, including Halder and Guderian, Hitler ordered the armored spearheads of Army Group Center to turn south toward Kyiv to support Army Group South and seize Ukrainian resources. This month-long diversion created the largest encirclement in military history, but delayed a decisive blow to Moscow. Meanwhile, the German logistics system was collapsing. Serious problems included: 1. Railway gauge. Soviet tracks were wider than German tracks, requiring a huge effort to convert, time-consuming and labor-intensive. 2. Roads. Most roads were rudimentary, and when the autumn rains arrived, they turned into muddy seas, Rasputitsa, slowing the movement of trucks and tanks. 3. Distance. Supply lines stretched for hundreds of miles, increasing the risk of Soviet partisan attacks and causing fuel and ammunition shortages on the front lines. After conquering Kyiv, Germany regrouped for Operation Typhoon, aiming to capture Moscow. But it was too late. As the German army approached the capital, the Russian winter arrived. The German soldiers lacked winter uniforms, their lubricants froze, and their weapons were inoperable in temperatures below 0 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union transferred fully equipped and experienced Siberian army units, battle-hardened in freezing conditions, to defend Moscow. In December 1941, the Red Army launched a major counteroffensive. German troops, exhausted and paralyzed by the cold, were pushed back 100 to 250 kilometers from the capital. Hitler's lightning attack had failed. Operation Barbarossa failed due to 5 main factors. 1. Underestimating the enemy's capabilities. German intelligence significantly underestimated the Soviet Union's manpower, reserves, and industrial capacity. 2. Strategic miscalculation. The decision to redirect the attack towards Kiev, instead of focusing on capturing Moscow, was the right decision. 3. Logistical and terrain problems. The vast distances, differing railway gauges, and the impact of mud made supplying the front lines impossible. 4. The power of winter. Harsh weather conditions rendered German troops and equipment ineffective, unprepared for a prolonged war. 5. Scorched earth tactics. The Soviet Union's implementation of scorched earth tactics, destroying supply lines and infrastructure during their retreat, made it impossible for the German army to rely on local resources. Operation Barbarossa marked the beginning of the bloodiest front in World War II and was a decisive turning point. Nazi Germany never recovered from the losses in manpower and equipment suffered in the Soviet Union in 1941 and 1942. The defeat at Barbarossa ended Germany's hopes of a quick victory and reshaped the entire war. It forced Germany to confront a protracted two-front war, a war Germany could never truly win.